Wow, oh wow, I cannot actually believe how well this turned out. These things have a real crack at being useful. Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I've just been delivered a whole bunch of things that I need to test, and I'm going to show you how I test these sorts of things and how you can test these sorts of things at home to determine whether you're happy with the product or not. So here I've got these sanding drums. Now, I've used sandpaper by hand before to do opals, but these little drums are basically a wrapped up strip. So you can see here, it's got quite a few layers. Once we've worn this out, the idea is that you can peel this back, cut it off. I like that these ones have some sort of resin gluing them all together at the bottom. Hopefully it's not too tough to be able to peel these off. They've also got little stickers that I guess you can replace each time you do it, because you don't want to forget what kind of grit they are, though it probably says on the back. I assume these are just normal sandpapers. And we've got from 240 all the way through to about 5,000. Yep, 5,000 grit. So that's a pretty good range. That's a similar range to what I do when I'm using wet dry sandpaper. These are just wet dry sandpaper rolled up into nice little bits that we can chuck straight in the Dremel. They're the same as the standard small shanks that I use for all of this. The difference is, instead of using these sintered diamonds, and then this is my standard 4-piece range of Nova points. This range altogether could end up costing you up to $200 depending on where you live. So it's quite an investment, and maybe there's something out there that can be cheaper and get this a similar kind of result. So I'm always on the hunt. And one of the cheaper options I've thought of are these, because these are basically 10% of that price. If I do decide to stock these in the store, they'll probably be around like the 15 Aussie dollar kind of mark. Much more affordable than getting the full sintered diamond all the way through to Nova points. And I want to see how well these go. So I've got this little opal here, and I'll start up the Dremel and walk you through what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and why. And we'll see a final result. So test number 1 is just making sure that the bits are nicely centered. I didn't expect it to be a problem, but I do test for the wobble all the time. Number 2, the splash, because I can dip a lot of my burrs into the tank really easily, but these ones not so much. They do flick a lot of water because of that little lip on it, which isn't a problem. I always suggest cutting with running water if you can anyway. I just have to do it this way because of the recording setup that I have. And then test 3, cutting away. So how quickly can we remove material with this 240 grit, the lowest, coarsest one? Now, spoiler alert, this takes forever. So these burrs are just not cut out really for this kind of hard work. They do remove material, they just don't remove it fast enough. You can see this sand spot, it's just not coming out. I know that I could use a coarse sintered diamond and it would already be gone. I know it's meant to be. I chose meant to be purposefully because it's really hard stuff to get through, and I wanted to put these to the test, but it is just a little bit slow. As you can see, I've barely gotten that sand out. And then I'm just testing the wear. I test the wear pretty regularly. These were wearing so much slower than I thought. I thought it would just all lose its little abrasiveness and I'd need to do this repair really quickly, but you really don't. They do last quite a long time. I did want to go through the process though, so I'd spent a lot of time on this grit just so that I could do this repair. So you can see here I'm taking off the sticker. I quickly realized that I don't need to take off the sticker because I'm seeing that bottom part there and realizing it's fully resin sealed, so I can't pick right down to the bottom. There's me wiping it thinking, what's going on? I thought there was like a second label or something underneath, a clear one. But no, you really do just grab it and you just peel off that top end above the sticker. So unfortunately that does cause some issues around that bottom edge, but I just peel it back, feel the place where it was starting to get coarse again, fold it in, rip it off. It rips really easily. It is sandpaper. It's not a cloth or anything like that. It's quite easy. But you can see there towards the bottom edge, I've left a little bit of an edge. You can do better and peel it back harder because that resin, I was a little bit scared of ripping it off after doing that, but it's really solid, so these are not a problem. They're not going to fall apart, which is a great thing. And then here I'm just chucking the sticker back on. The idea is that you don't remove the sticker on these ones. I did not know, but I do now. And I'm looking at this little lip. So there's clearly a deformation here and I'm worried about that flapping. But at the same time, I realize it is in the correct orientation for my Dremel to not whip the stone. We'll talk about that a bit later. So now dry checking between all the stages, all the time. No matter how I'm doing this, But particularly when I'm testing something new, you're dry checking between each stage, making sure that you can track it. And yeah, I was surprised to say there was color. This was meant to be a piece of Minterby potch, and I didn't realize that I was cutting something that would actually face. Then I'm just testing all the transitions, so rotating the stone 90 degrees. If you go in the opposite direction, well, not the opposite, if you go perpendicular to the previous direction, you'll be able to track the changes in the surface much easier. If you just keep going in the same direction, you won't know which scratches are from which stage. This will just reset all the scratches into the next orientation, and then you'll be confident that you've got it done. And I needed to do this because I didn't know how fast these things were going to work, or if they were going to work at all. And surprisingly, they actually do work. So you'll be seeing a lot more of these in the future, and I do recommend that people on a really strict budget skip the Novas, and they can probably use these. As you'll see in a second, the result is very good. We won't show all the other stages. Wow, oh wow, I cannot actually believe how well this turned out. These things have a real crack at being useful, so I think these might get stocked. So this is the highest grit one that I'm holding in my hand here. It's the 5000 grit. So we went through all of them, got through the 5000. I'll give a whole heap of pros and cons, but let's first just appreciate how well this is done. This is no cerium oxide. This has not even had the metal oxide put on it yet. And you know what? That, to my eye, is actually polished. I thought it would just be a pre-polish. This has done an incredible job. So I guess we'll go through the positives first. One, it can get a full shine. So I didn't use any tools other than, well, actually there's a bit of a secret. I haven't used any tools other than these sandpapers, or at least I could have achieved this result purely by the sandpaper. I would still hit this with a metal oxide, either aluminium or cerium oxide, just to finish off that mirror polish. Because there are some areas where, you know, you might get a little bit better, but really, a lot of people would be happy with this result, and it was very non-complicated. Now, the negatives I'll go through. This was not honestly done purely by the drums. So when I was going at it with the 240 grit, so this initial one, you can see here, I went through 2 little pads of it. So 2 full rotations around this burr. You can see it's lost a bit over its time. Now, this was pretty much useless when it came to shaping the opal and removing a lot of the crust. This 240 grit will actually remove opal slower than my sintered diamond 600. So I actually switched over to the 600 sintered diamond, ground it back a little bit more, then switched back to this, done another coat over it, and then went from there, progressed through, no problems, didn't use any other tools. But I did sneak in the 600 sintered diamond because it was going too slow. This would cut similar to maybe like a 60 grit Nova point, but definitely nothing like the 600 grit sintered diamond. So I would still suggest, even if we do go with these, the budget buyers can use these to replace the Novas, maybe even to replace the polish if you're happy with this kind of polish, though I would always recommend getting a metal oxide. It's cheap and will yield a better result. I think you could get away with getting electroplated burrs to do the rough cutting and shaping, and then go from here onwards and not have to buy the Novas. These also last quite a long time. Because I was pushing so hard and using this for so long, giving it a good chance to remove the opal, I did go through the 2 layers. But with these other ones, I haven't even replaced them. I've just gone and used the outermost layer once, and to be honest, it's still got some grit left in it. This one's been worn pretty hard. The 400 I gave a really long time, so I'm not surprised with that. But the later ones, they're not actually that poorly affected. That 1000, I could probably use that again. Maybe for each stone you'd peel off a new layer, in which case you'd still get quite a few stones out of that. I can't count the layers, but there's quite a few layers in that one. Now, the other negative is, you can see here, when you peel it back, you can actually peel it much closer to the resin. I didn't realize you didn't have to remove these stickers. These stickers are kind of part of the glue, so you can leave those stickers on and just peel right back. I can peel this one back a little bit further, you can see there. The problem with ripping it is you do end up with these uneven edges, and you do end up with this flap here. Now, this is particularly important for anyone with a reversible motor, or a motor that's going to spin in this direction. That will catch on the edge of something and it will just flick it away, or it'll just kick this off all the time. Luckily enough, my rotary tool, and I think most, spins in this direction, so it's not that noticeable. But if you've got sensitive fingers and you've been doing it for a while, you will feel every time you get that full rotation in. Now, in full honesty, I do believe these have a place. For the budget cutter, you can get your electroplated burrs plus these, and I'll probably make up some sort of kit on the website when I stock the electroplated burrs and these, and have a budget starter's guide and everything like that. Because I think you could go with electroplated burrs, get the shaping done, make sure you won't be able to do a lot of really fine carving because these barrels are quite big. Maybe when they get smaller, it'll be okay. But for now, it's much more like a cabbing wheel or a flat lap, just using it like this. I think you could actually clamp your Dremel and these would work really well for that kind of style of cutting as well. But I think I will stock these and just advertise them as a Nova Point alternative. To get the same polish as this with the Novas, you would have to go beyond that 4 kit, past the 3000. The 3000 never gets a finish like this. You'd be looking more like maybe not quite the 50,000, maybe one step below, which I think is about a 14,000. You would have to go to there just to get this done, and I think the reason for that is this sandpaper is actually pretty good quality, and rather than just delaminating all of the silicon carbide, I believe the sandpaper is, it seems to grind down and leave the finer particles on for longer. So by the time you're finished, a good example is this 400 here feels almost exactly the same as this 800 fresh area. So it really does grind down to about twice the fineness of the grits. Now, if you get really experienced with that, there might be times where you can skip a grit because you're like, oh yeah, this feels like a 800, so maybe I can skip the 800, go to 1000. And that probably would work, but I would recommend going through each of the stages because there will be some overlap. You will actually be going backwards slightly, jumping up to the next grit and then surpassing this, but at least that way you won't miss any of the scratches. There's nothing worse in carving than going backwards. It will actually more than double the time it takes you to do a stone. But honestly guys, this if someone gave me this and told me it was their first attempt at carving, I would say you've hit the nail on the head, you've done everything correctly, and I wouldn't have even known that they'd skip the cerium oxide. Honestly, this has produced a polish far beyond what I was expecting. Now, I go into these things trying to be a believer that it could work, but honestly, in the back of my mind, I did think there's no way I'm going to find a use for these. And honestly, the transitioning from grit to grit, because there's so many more stages, it actually feels a lot easier, simpler, and quicker. I was getting through this real fast. I reckon I got this one done faster than I would if I went with my Sinter Diamond and Nova Points. Well, apart from the shaping, I would have done a lot more shaping. You can see I've left it in its original shape because I didn't want to spend 10 hours just shaping the stone. Definitely need something before these sandpapers, but an electroplated burr kit would do that and you would end up with a really good result. I'm so surprised, and I'm also surprised because this is a pretty rough piece of Minterby and I wasn't expecting it to face or show any colors, and in the end it actually has. So I'm going to go metal oxide this one and just get it nicely polished. I'll probably run around with the 600 Sinter Diamond and go through the Novas just to finish off the edges and the shaping. But this is actually a surprising stone. I was expecting a piece of potch, but you know what? Sometimes Minterby just surprises. I like to test with Minterby because it's the hardest of the opal, and it gives the tools the hardest time. So if the sandpapers were going to instantly delaminate, I wanted to know, and I wanted to test it with the hardest material I've got. So yeah, on that note, I'm going to go finish off this stone, and I will see you guys in the next one.